Hi there, welcome to my channel and welcome to 1803 of the Decades Challenge. It's the start of a new year, a new week and a new season, and 1803 is fall, as you can see at the bottom of the screen there. And there's quite a lot happening in this week's episode, but we're starting off on Sunday just at our main household doing duties around the farm, but things are quickly going to pick up throughout the week. Most of this week is going to take place in our second household, so today we're just going to enjoy the calm in our main household. And because there's not much happening in our main household, I am going to spend the off days with Alexander, the heir to our main household here, working on his aspiration. And the biggest thing we need to work on is getting those collectibles from the Bramblewood. And there's actually 5 items I need to get. I think in my last video I said 3, and I thought I had successfully got one, but I see it's not been checked off. So I'm going to head back to the Bramblewood and pick up a few more things. Hopefully, if I spend the day there, the rest of the plants will come into season. Also, because this is a new season from last week, I'm hoping we can find a few more things. And with that, let's get into this week's episode. I travelled to the graveyard site in the Bramblewood, and one of the lot traits that I've put on here must be that curses can happen to my Sims, because we met Bruce and Alexander was having a chat with Bruce, and while that was happening, they both peed themselves. And I then had Alexander clean himself off in the river, but he then felt too uncomfortable to do anything. So I couldn't get him to look for any collectibles and ended up having to just go back home. So with that said, Sunday is actually over and was wasted with all of this shenanigans. And we are on to Monday, and Monday is in our second household, where we have 2 birthdays. 2 birthdays at our second household because the twins are aging up, and they are aging up from teenagers to young adults. So somebody had taken a bite out of the cake, so I've just made another cake there, and Charles and Hamish are about to age up to young adults. And given that the situation in the second household has become a little bit dramatic, they will be leaving home as soon as they age up. They're going to take a page out of the leaf of their older brother Alfred, and they're just going to take their inheritance and go. First up to age up, we have Charles, and Charles's existing traits are that he is cheerful and he is a goofball. So I'm just going to pick a third trait for him just now. And I am going to make Charles outgoing. So he's a cheerful goofball and he's outgoing because that's the kind of character that Charles is. He's just kind of quite laid back and happy to meet people. And next up we have his twin brother Hamish. He is aging up now. And Hamish's existing traits are that he is erratic and childish. He was the slightly more wild of the twins, with his brother keeping him stable, but they're both quite fun-loving and good characters, so I'm just going to pick a third trait for him just now. And I'm going to make Hamish an idealist, which goes along a little bit with his childish personality, despite having come from a home where things have become a little bit dramatic and unsettled, because there are still some issues with Bruce and Margaret. In previous episodes we saw them arguing with each other. Margaret didn't appreciate the fact that after their father Stuart died, Bruce, as the oldest brother and heir to the household, took over and started bossing her around, and she didn't really appreciate that, and there have been a few fights in this household. And so the twins are taking their inheritance now, and they are going to leave. And not only are they leaving this household, but they are actually leaving this neighbourhood, unlike Alfred, who just moved to the next house over. The twins are going to move into the town area of Henford-on-Bagley, and they're going to move onto the lot where the Gnome's Arms are, which is why they were given the aspiration of being entrepreneurs. They are going to open a tavern/inn in the town that will replace the Gnome's Arms, and they will run that, and that will be their storyline going forward. I am using this lot here as our inn and tavern. It's called Tavern and Inn, and it's a build by Snarky Witch, and I actually have a few of her builds saved into my library. She does a lot of really good builds, particularly if you're doing a Decades Challenge. She's got a lot of medieval style builds, so definitely check out Snarky Witch. I'm just going to make a couple of changes. As you can see, some of the items were removed because this would have been made with some packs that I don't own. And I also want to change this to be a residential business lot so that the twins will live on the top floor and the ground floor will be run as a pub venue. So I'm just going to make those changes just now in the background. And going forward, this will be a setting for some of the social events for my Sims. They will come to this place and it will be the twins that are running this business. So as I finish up the build here, it's probably a good time to mention that the twins here, the McLeod twins, don't intend to get married and start families of their own. They're quite happy just doing their own thing. They're not really interested in having relationships or doing that sort of thing. They will just be here together running this pub. So their story will kind of end with them. They won't have any heirs, but there's Hamish taking off his clothes because he's erratic and it's raining, and Charles is just completely unbothered by it because at this point he's used to it. So they will still be characters in the background of this story, and I will have someone else take over the pub when they die so that it is characters we know that are running the pub. But for now, that is them, and I'm going to leave their story there for just now. We won't be visiting them again this week because there's quite a lot on this week. It is the early hours of Tuesday morning, and Alexander has just finished all the chores on the farm, and he's just spent some time bonding with Sugarbush. And now I'm going to travel back to the Bramblewood, and I'm hoping that because I was there the last couple of days, there will be some more harvestables ready for us to collect. The last time I was there, although it didn't go well, I did see that there were some more things that had come into season. So hopefully we'll be able to make some progress on that part of Alexander's aspiration today. And this time I'm not going to travel to the graveyard, I'm going to travel to the old manse because there's no lot traits on there that are going to make Alexander pee himself and then get dirty and then not be able to do anything because he's too uncomfortable. I haven't managed to get anything for Alexander, but I'm just going to wait here until 5 AM because it's coming up for 5 AM, and I'm hoping that if I stay in this area for 5 AM, all the things that are in season will come into bloom, and there should be enough here for him to make significant progress or possibly even check that part of his aspiration off, so we'll see how we get on. So that's 5 AM and we can harvest this bush now, and hopefully that will give us some progress. Yeah, there we go. So that's 1 out of 5 of our collectibles. So I'm now just going to go around the neighbourhood and look for anything else that we can harvest, and hopefully we'll find 4 more things. Unfortunately, nothing else became ready to be harvested, so I'm going to go into another day of trying this again another time, and hopefully next time we'll get what we need. It's Tuesday night now and things are all very calm and pleasant in our main household. Everyone's gathering around the dinner table and just having some pleasant conversation because our first household is relatively drama-free. However, the same can't be said for our second household, where one member of the household has snuck out to meet up with someone. And here we have Margaret once more sneaking out to meet up with Richard. Margaret and Richard are both teenagers and they've been carrying out a little bit of a relationship, and it's been the main cause of Margaret's arguments with Bruce. Bruce is not happy that his one and only sister, his little sister, is going out and meeting up with a boy outside of the family's control, and he's worried that she's maybe behaving in a way that isn't appropriate for the time period, but she's still sneaking out and doing it regardless. And on the topic of Richard, here on Wednesday morning now, it's his birthday, and he is aging up from a teen to a young adult. Of course, this being the year that the twins aged up to young adults, it's also the year that Margaret is going to age up to a young adult. So Richard is a love bug and he is self-assured, and his third trait is that he is hot-headed. And as it is another day, Wednesday morning, I'm back in the Bramblewood with Alexander, and we're going to try one more time to get some of these harvestables to check off this part of his aspiration. And so far I've found a few more that look like they're going to be harvestable, so we seem to be having slightly better luck this time around. And that's another one, so that's us starting to make some progress at last. And there's quite a few things, there's quite a few mushrooms appeared in places where they weren't in the days before when I visited, so we should be able to get a few more. I think I might even be able to get enough to actually complete this stage of his aspiration if I wait long enough, because the mushrooms seem to be sprouting up in a few more locations. And success, I've found quite a few patches of mushrooms, and I don't know if it's because we're now in fall and more of the mushrooms are in season, or if just more of them have sprouted in the time that I've spent in this neighbourhood, but we are about to collect our 5th harvestable, which should check off that part of our aspiration, and yes, there we go. So the only thing Alexander has to do now to complete his aspiration is to grow one perfect oversized crop, which I have been working on, and he's in the process of growing some oversized crops at the moment. They've come in at the largest size, but whether they will be excellent quality or perfect quality, I don't know. I'll have to wait for them to actually finish growing, so hopefully we'll get an answer to that before the end of this week. If not, hopefully early next week, and we can check off all of Alexander's aspiration, which is good because he is now a young adult, and in the very near future we will be looking to get a wife for Alexander so that we can start his story. These are the oversized crops that we have here. I've got 4, and I have had some super vitality fertilizer, so I've been trying to just use them on the 2 in the foreground, which is the pumpkin and the mushroom, and I'm using just regular vitality fertilizer on the lettuce that are in the background, and I'm hoping that because I've used a lot of super vitality fertilizer on these 2 at the front, that at least one of them will grow to be a perfect oversized crop. But again, unfortunately, they do take a little bit longer to finish growing, so we'll just have to keep looking after them every day, tending to them, and hope for the best. I'm having Alexander calm himself down here because he got a little bit hysterical while he was talking to his oversized crops, which still haven't finished growing. And as I look at him here, I'm not entirely sure I like his look. In Cass, I thought that the hairstyle and the facial hair quite suited him, but when I'm actually in live mode, I'm not so sure that it looks that good. So I may change his appearance at some point this week and maybe play about with it. I'll see how I feel. Every time I go into Cass, though, I feel like any other look I try him I don't particularly like, and I will definitely be changing his look at some point, especially as he gets older, but it's whether or not I change it now, I'm not really sure. I'll have to have a think about it and play about and see. Because Alexander's in a good position with his aspiration, I've also been working on Anne's aspiration. Anne is quite close to aging up herself as well, obviously, because everyone else has aged up. And as she is not the heir to this household when she ages up, we will be looking to marry her and move her out of the household. And the same with her younger sister Audrey. When she ages up, I'll be looking to move her out as soon as possible. So I'm just trying to make a little bit of progress. I'm not exactly sure I'm going to be able to finish their aspirations, because at this time I'm having the Sims age up quicker than I normally would because they don't live as long back in the early 1800s, so they don't spend as long as teenagers as they would in later decades. And also the fact that they would likely leave home at a much younger age in the 1800s than they would in more modern times. So I may abandon the idea that I'd had of having all the children complete their aspirations when they were teenagers. I'll see how I get on with Anne and I'll kind of make a decision from there. It's Friday morning now, we're nearing the end of 1803, and these oversized crops are still not ready to harvest, so I still don't know if they're perfect quality or not, although they do look pretty good, so hopefully they are. But Friday is a bigger day in our second household because we're back there for another birthday. So once I've done all the chores on the farm, we'll be heading across because it is, of course, Margaret's birthday, and Margaret is aging up to a young adult. And here we are at our second household, and Margaret is blowing out her candles because she's about to age up to a young adult. So the thing I didn't do with Margaret was I didn't give her the creative trait when she was younger. She's outgoing and a love bug, and she is creative, and I did say that I would give all the female Sims the creative trait, as is the rules of the Decades Challenge. I didn't do it with Margaret because I wanted her to have the love bug and outgoing traits first so that I could play some of her storyline as a teenager. But now that she is a young adult, she has even less qualms about sneaking out. And Margaret once again is meeting up with Richard, and now that they've both come of age, she has decided that she can make decisions for herself because she's a grown-up now. And it's going to cause a lot of problems with Bruce because Bruce is definitely not going to be happy that she's behaving this way. But being an outgoing love bug and finding someone like Richard, Margaret just can't help herself. And these two are getting closer and closer, despite the fact that there's a smelly pile of leaves in the background. They're very much enjoying each other's company. And after spending some time with Richard, Margaret once again heads back home. It's convenient that he lives quite close to where she is and she can just walk back home. And things might have changed a little bit for Margaret after this latest meeting with Richard. We're back at our main household. It's Saturday, it's the end of the week, the end of the year, and it's time for our celebration, which this year is bonfire night, because this year was autumn, and we have to put up decorations, which I actually haven't done yet. We have to have a fire, and we do have a campfire on our grounds that we can light up for that. Fireworks is on there. I haven't really been doing that because of the time period. And we also have to have the party spirit and the art and music spirit. So I'll be working through that with everyone. Everyone is now more grown up. So every activity applies to every person. When the children were children, toddlers and infants, they didn't necessarily have to do so many things, but now everything applies to everyone. The main one is, of course, the fire and the decorations. So that's the decorations up, and that's checked that off for everyone. So I'll get someone to light the fire, and then we'll start just celebrating a little bit so that everyone in this main household can have a good holiday. And we're at the end of the week, end of the year, and these crops still haven't become harvestable. So I still don't know if we have a perfect crop here for Alexander. So that will go into next week's episode to see if he's managed to check off that part of his aspiration. If he hasn't, I'm not really too bothered because we've got plenty of time to check that off. I wanted his aspiration out the way before he started having his own family because the concentration will be on raising his children. But this is an easy thing. If it's just the one thing that I have to do to get it completed, that makes it a lot easier. It's just something he can do every morning when he's doing his gardening anyway, and we'll just chip away at that. But again, I will still try and get it done, ideally this time around. And here we have Audrey, the youngest member of this household, lighting the fire, which will check that off for her. And there we go, you see her celebrating, she's quite happy. So I'm just going to get the other members of the household to come and add fuel to the fire, dance at the fire, hang out at the fire, do anything else that they want to do. And Audrey's just autonomously started dancing at the fire. That's good, that's her having the party spirit. So that's her doing something else. As you can see, she's looking quite happy there. She's close to having a good holiday already. So this one I think is usually quite easy to get checked off for everyone. I think in the past it was only difficult for the children because they didn't acknowledge most things. And there's Rory already done enough to have a good holiday. So that's 1 out of 5 in the household already where they need to be. And I'll just bring everyone else to the fire and hopefully we'll manage to get everyone else checked off. So Audrey is close to having a happy holiday. Penny is asleep because she was up most of the night. Rory has had a happy holiday. Alexander has now had a happy holiday as well, dancing at the fire. As you can see, they haven't checked off all of the goals. And Anne is close to having a happy holiday. So I'll get her to just do some party-related activities for the party spirit aspect of it. And that should get her over the line as well, hopefully. And there we go, practicing singing has been enough for Anne to do enough to get a happy holiday because that's her art and music spirit. So that's 3 out of 5 Sims where they need to be. I've got Penny on her way to the fire, and that's enough for her to check off everything, and she is going to have a good holiday as well. Which means I'm just left with Audrey, and Audrey always seems to be the awkward one, even though it's not the fact that she's a toddler or an infant and that's the issue. She is a teenager, the same as Anne, but it seems to be taking a little bit longer, so I'm going to have her practice singing there, and then we'll maybe get her to do some specific holiday-related activities. And then that should be it, because the other 4 have all done enough to have a happy holiday. And telling some jokes to her dad, Rory, has been enough for Audrey to have a happy holiday as well, because that gave her some of the party spirit, doing some of the party activities there, and that is everyone in this household now had a good holiday, which means it's the end of the holiday, it's the end of the day, end of the week, end of the year. And normally this is where I would end an episode. I would give a summary of what's happened over the week. But before I do that, I want to just check in with our second household. And I think we'll end the episode with them for a change. And just as everything was pleasant and happy and nice in our first household, the same can't be said for our second household, because Margaret and Bruce are still arguing. And things haven't gotten any better, especially not since Margaret became an adult. And this time they're actually arguing about something quite significant.
Tima, usanet. Infalingness wabarani bayumi squirmish.
Because something about Margaret has changed since the last time we checked in on this household. Since the last time we checked in on this household, Margaret's interactions with Richard have taken a turn, and she's pregnant, which Bruce is absolutely furious about. His little sister is pregnant out of wedlock, which is quite the taboo for 1803. He can't believe that she's brought this shame on his family, and she insists that it doesn't matter because she's in love with Richard, and she thinks it's all one big fairy tale. Bruce obviously doesn't agree, but one thing they do both agree on is that Margaret is now going to have to marry Richard. And as you can see as she gets up and walks here, Margaret is already showing that pregnancy, so the marriage is going to happen very soon. It's going to happen right at the start of 1804 because Bruce is determined to get his sister married before she gives birth to her baby. And even though Margaret is aggravated to be the loser of her argument with Bruce, she's still happy as she enters the second trimester of her pregnancy. And that is the drama for this household. And just as Margaret sits there and eats some cake because she has an increased appetite now, being already in the second trimester of her pregnancy, a summary of what happened this week. At the beginning of the week, the twins in our second household had their birthday. They aged up from teenagers to young adults, and they left their family home to take over a new tavern in the Gnome's Arms lot in Henford-on-Bagley in the town area. Richard McNeil aged up to a young adult, and Margaret aged up to a young adult, and Margaret and Richard took their relationship a step further, with Margaret becoming pregnant. And that is where we end off 1803. Join us next time when we see how this drama continues to unfold and the relationship between Bruce and Margaret continues to deteriorate. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a like, consider subscribing so that you can keep following this story. And thanks for watching.
Laksa.
Ah, Kim Nu.
Honeyooza. Buzzeric.
Sweet boo.
Ah, Cheflet. Amoo.
Oh. Oh.